about to escape this world. We are about to be raptured. Now, there are a lot of people out there that don't believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. So I want to give 3 reasons why I am certain that there is a pre-tribulation rapture. So the first thing I want to look at is the fact that the return of Jesus Christ is referred to as being imminent. The word imminent is spelled I-M-M-I-N-E-N-T. It's one of the doctrines of the return of Christ, immanency. And the word imminency means that Jesus could return at any moment. That at a time and an hour which we do not know, that's when Jesus is going to return. Now, if that is the case, then the rapture cannot occur during the 7-year Great Tribulation. It can't occur in the middle of it, and it can't happen at the end of it. It has to happen before anyone realizes the Great Tribulation has started. Because there are time references used in the book of Daniel and in the book of Revelation for major events in the Great Tribulation. And those time references are all based upon the time period of 3.5 years. The first time the 3.5 year period is mentioned is in Daniel 9:27. And then we read in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, that there's 3.5 years. Also, we read in Revelation 11 that the 2 witnesses, who are most likely Elijah and Moses, but they are 2 supernatural witnesses, they are going to be preaching before the wall of the temple. So the temple has to be it has to be in the midst of being rebuilt at that time or have been rebuilt. And they're going to be preaching for exactly 3.5 years. So if you can measure those time periods, first of all, if the Antichrist comes into the temple and declares himself to be God, that is the moment that you're to click off that 3.5 years has passed since the beginning of the Revelation, and there's exactly 3.5 years left. And that time frame is also used in Revelation 12 after the Antichrist uses his power to go after the Jewish nation. Well, it says the Jews are protected in the desert for 3.5 years. So 3.5 years, well, why do they need to be protected? Because they did not accept the Antichrist's claim that he was God when he went into the rebuilt temple. So 3.5 years occurs during the first half of the Great Tribulation, then the Antichrist declares himself to be God, and exactly 3.5 years later, Jesus Christ returns with the church. And if you want to reference that, that's in Revelation chapter 19. The church returns with Jesus Christ. And so if the church is raptured halfway through the Great Tribulation, well, we would be able to start the countdown at the time the 2 witnesses began to witness before the walls of the temple. And exactly 3.5 years later is when the abomination of desolation is going to happen. We would be able to time out when the mid-tribulation rapture was. And if Jesus was to return at the end of the Great Tribulation, well, then that would be 3.5 years from the moment the Antichrist declared himself to be God until the time of Jesus' return, which, it's the craziest idea you can have, that the rapture is going to occur at the same time we're going to return with Jesus. They call it the slingshot. We get caught up together with the Lord and we immediately return. And none of those things make sense, first of all. I mean, how are you going to be ready to rule the earth as a Christian if you've just been raptured just seconds earlier? I mean, the whole one of the whole purposes of the rapture is that you're getting trained to be a leader on the earth. You're going to get 7 years earth time to be with the Lord, and we don't know how long that is in God's timing. You know, we're going to be in heaven where one day is as 1,000 years and 1,000 years is one day. So it may be that the time we are in heaven may extend for 7,000 years, if that's an accurate way to look at it. One day is 1,000 years. Actually, one day times 360 times 7, that's how many times 1,000. That's what we're talking about as how long it could be that we're in heaven. Nevertheless, the idea that the rapture occurs at the midpoint or at the end of the 7 years, it goes against the idea of the doctrine of imminency. The idea that Jesus could appear at any moment and take the church. So if Jesus over and over again told us that he would come for us at a time that we would be unaware of, well, then we wouldn't have been able to count down to it. So that's the first reason why there has to be a pre-tribulation rapture. The second reason is found in the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 9, 24 through 27 again, is the verses that explain the 70 years prophecy. Now, the 70-year prophecy is divided up into 7 years, 62 years, and 1 year. And the 7 and 62 years, I'm sorry, I should say weeks. It's 70 weeks prophecy. So it's 7 weeks and 62 weeks is 69 weeks. And then there's a final week. And these weeks are not days, they're years, they're 7 years periods. So 69 7-year periods occurred from the time, according to that prophecy in Daniel 9:24, from the time that the king Artaxerxes makes his command that Israel is to rebuild their walls, which happened in 445 BC, and then you add up those 69 times 7 years, which has to be 360-day years because they use the Hebrew calendar for all biblical understanding of time. So that's why instead of being 1,305 days for the 3.5 years, it says 1,305 days. It says 1,290 days because we're calculating 3.5. Well, I'm not getting that correctly, but anyway, the key factor here is that the Bible uses 360 day as the number of days in a year because that's the way the Jewish calendar was set up. So anyway, you multiply 69 times 360 days, and you come out to, I think it's 188,000 plus days. And so if you look at the exact date that Artaxerxes made his commandment to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, which basically is what happens in Nehemiah chapter 1. Again, these are prophecies in the book of Daniel of what's going to happen in the future. The walls being rebuilt happened after Babylon's empire had fallen, and it happened during the time that Artaxerxes was the emperor of Persia. And so Artaxerxes made that commandment for Nehemiah to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and exactly 188 or 183,800 days later, which is what the 69 times 7 years occurred, it says, then the Messiah shall be cut off. And it literally uses the word Messiah, which is the Greek word Christos, which is Christ. It's talking about Jesus. And the word cut off in Hebrew means either being put to death for capital punishment or an animal being sacrificed to God. And so Jesus fulfills both of those meanings of the word to be cut off. And it turns out that period of time from 445 BC until 31 AD works out perfectly, and that's when Jesus was crucified in 31 AD. And now there's this 1 week left, the 70th week. And something happens between the 69th and 70th week. Something hidden, a mystery. 1 Corinthians chapter 50, verse 51 says, "Behold, I show you a mystery. Not everyone shall sleep, but many are going to be transformed in the twinkling of an eye." This mystery is the church. In Ephesians chapter 4, it says that, this talks about a man and his wife, and it says, "This is a great mystery, even of the church, even of Jesus and his church, his bride." So we understand that the church is a mystery. It's the bride of Christ, but it's hidden in the Old Testament as a mystery. So there is this period of time between the 69th and 70th weeks, which is a mystery that no one will be able to calculate. And at the 70th week, the church is no longer there. The church does not exist until after the Messiah is cut off. And then at the beginning of the 70th week, it says, "The prince of the people that shall come signs a covenant with the people of Israel," and that's the beginning of the 70th week. That's the Antichrist signing that peace treaty with the nation of Israel. So between the 69th and 70th week is only the time that the church exists. After the 69th week, when the 70th week begins, there's no longer a church. It's just like the 69 weeks previously where there was not a church. The 70th week is equal to the 69 weeks. It's a period of time where there is no church. So the church is not in that 7-year period, the Great Tribulation. So it's a pre-tribulation rapture. And the third verse I want to look at here, which I believe is important to understand this, is found in Matthew. And, oh my goodness, I had it here. Just one moment, please, as I get my computer to go from being blank to actually showing me the verse that I had pulled up here. And oh my screen has gone blank. So I'm going to go ahead while I'm waiting for this to pull up. I'm just going to go ahead and explain it to you what I meant. So, here it is. It's Matthew 24 verse 37. Matthew 24 verse 37. And the verse says, "For as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." And then Acts 24:37. 24:38 says, "For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day Noah entered into the ark." And so the idea here is that the coming of the Son of Man at the rapture will be just like the days right before Noah entered the ark. So what were the days like before Noah entered the ark? Well, we try to make all these allusions to the other things we read in the book of Genesis, but it tells us right here what he's talking about. He says in verse 38 that he's talking about the fact that in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. In other words, they were going about their everyday business without a care in the world. And so this will not be a time of great persecution. It won't be a time of the Antichrist hunting people down and putting them to death. It won't be a time of great fear where demons are manifesting in physical presences and where asteroids and comets are hitting the earth. These are all things that happened during the Great Tribulation, but apparently before the rapture, everyone's going to be going about their business as if they didn't have a care in the world. They're going to be going to restaurants and eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, and just like they always had. And so, in one sense, we see that has been impeded by the coronavirus, but it still happens. Even with the coronavirus, people are going out to restaurants and eating. That is not inhibited. And people, even though they're finding they're having to change the circumstances of their wedding to fit with the coronavirus, they're still, without a care, getting married. They're not worried that something dreadful is going to happen, like police coming in and arresting everyone at the wedding party. Those types of things would only happen during the Great Tribulation. So this is another verse that tells me that right before the Great Tribulation, that's when the rapture happens, when everybody's able to go out to restaurants and eat. No one's starving to death. There is no famine. And also there is the ability to get married, that you'll be able to get married just like you always had. And that means that it can't be a time of great persecution. So those three things, the imminency, that Jesus can return at any moment, that you couldn't time out when Jesus would come. Secondly, the idea that there is a reason why the Great Tribulation, the 7-year period, is called the 70th week of Daniel, because it's just like the 69 other weeks when there wasn't a church. And the third reason is that the time of the rapture will occur before there's great calamity on the earth, that people will be able to go out to eat and drink, and people will be able to get married. So I hope this has been a blessing to you, and Maranatha, I'll see you in the air. God bless you.